law enforcement and crime prevention. Each police officer will undergo a federal background check in efforts to remove any blind spots that may have occurred with only the local and or state background checks. The federal background checks will ensure that every police officer can provide proof of citizenship or legal resident status that permits them to qualify for the job of police officer. Any police officer who cannot provide proof of citizenship or legal resident status is vulnerable to blackmail, extortion, and most especially coercion by anyone who possess such information, such as family members, friends, or anyone in the community with that knowledge or details. Additionally, it shows that the police officer can pass a federal background check. Myself, I've had at least 7 background checks, 2 in high school with the Department of Defense. This is with the summer employment program I participated in when I was in high school, and I worked for the Anniston Army Depot. And if you work for the Anniston Army Depot, you are submitted to a background check, regardless as to your age. And I had to submit to a background check with the Department of Defense for 2 summers. 2 times in college with the FBI and the Department of Defense, 1 post-college with the Department of Defense, and 1 as a Federal Bureau of Investigation applicant, and 1 as a Secret Service applicant. Anyone who do not pass a federal background check cannot remain with the New York Police Department, regardless as to the years of service, their position, their titles, to include those who qualify under acts, programs, paroles, authorizations, orders, and etc. Each biological male police officer will have his information submitted to the Selective Service to ensure that he has registered for the Selective Service or the draft. Each biological female police officer will have all biological males' information submitted to the Selective Service who surfaced during her background check that are between the ages of 18 and 65. Subsequently, all biological female police officers, as a part of her moral character assessment during the application process, has to ensure that every biological male between the ages of 18 and 65 has registered with the Selective Service. If not, she cannot remain with the New York Police Department, regardless as to the years of service, position, titles, and etc., to include those who qualify under acts, programs, paroles, authorizations, and orders. Failure to register for the Selective Service is a federal felony, and it is punishable for up to 5 years in prison or $250,000 fine. The Selective Service weighs heavily on her moral character. And as someone a check to apply for the firearm license, moral character is very important. If it has a heavy impact on my firearm license or anyone who apply for a firearm license, it should have equally as much of a heavy impact becoming a police officer. New York Police Department police officers will require personal liability insurance. This action will relieve NYPD of the overwhelming expense of liability insurance and excessive premiums and settlements. New York Police Department's liability insurance takes up a very large portion of the New York Police Department budget. Insurance companies will have full access to personnel files to include all complaints, disciplinary actions, demotions, reassignments, settlements, and etc., to include those that are substantiated and those that are deemed unsubstantiated in efforts to determine individual premium costs. The Civilian Complaint Review Board, or the CCRB, will be dismantled, and all responsibilities will be transferred back to the New York City Council. All New York City residents will be instructed to submit and forward all complaints and investigations requests to the City Council. The City Council is the lawmaking body of New York City, and it is their responsibility to address, investigate, discipline, and refer cases for prosecution, if applicable, of the NYPD, the MTA, Police, Port Authority Police, and the New York State Police Department, New York State Police, to the DA's office or to the Special Prosecutor's Office. As it stands, the CCRB is maintained, staffed, and heavily influenced by the NYPD. Vast majority of the complaints and investigations are determined unsubstantiated. The New York Police Department headquarters Firearms License Division will be dismantled, and all approvals, denials, appeals, and background check findings of firearm applications will be transferred to the New York City Council. The New York City Council will review all applications, sign off on all background check findings. Additionally, they will oversee any approvals, denials, and appeals will be conducted through the City Council. This will allow the applicants the opportunity to present and argue any denials and appeals to elected officials. Exemptions are the state and federal law prohibitions with verified background checks results. Additionally, all complaints, opinions, thoughts, assessments, red flags that are not from board certified or licensed mental health professionals but are from the community will be addressed by the City Council. The federal law prohibitions are under Title 18 United States Code Section 922G. These people are prohibited possessing firearms. Anyone under indictment for a crime for which they could be imprisoned for more than 1 year. Anyone convicted of a crime for which they could have been imprisoned for more than 1 year. Anyone who is an unlawful user of marijuana, narcotics, or any controlled substance. Anyone who has been adjudicated mentally defective or involuntarily committed to a mental institution. Anyone dishonorably discharged from the armed forces. Anyone in the United States illegally. Anyone subject to a court order restraining them from harassing, stalking, or threatening an intimate partner or child of a partner. And anyone convicted of a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence. All New York City residents who possess firearms and ammunition will require mandatory firearms insurance. The firearms insurance will include mandatory liability and accidental coverage. All New York City residents must show proof of insurance in efforts to purchase and possess firearms. Veterans, visitors, tourists, and other out-of-town residents must have and show proof of insurance in efforts to possess and carry firearms in New York City. Travelers' firearms insurance will be made available. Additionally, off-duty police officers who wish to carry firearms during this time must obtain personal firearms insurance. All New York City residents who possess firearms and ammunition are required to attend periodical responsible gun ownership classes of approximately 8 hours every 6 months or 16 hours annually. In class instructions, residential safekeeping instructions, shooting and range exercises with tests and scores will all play a role in their premiums. Additionally, additional firearm premiums will reflect high test scores and shooting scores that will lower your premiums if you test high on the test that they will give you, a written test that they will give you, and on the shooting scores. The aforementioned actions that I have gone over, especially with illegal immigrants who have been convicted of a violent crime or violent offense, immigration classes, which will include instructions on the law, permanent and exclusive housing for the severely mentally ill, federal background checks for all police officers, mandatory firearm insurance for those who wish to possess and carry firearms, and responsible gun ownership classes to include free public transportation on all city buses and subways and trains, will lower the crime rate for New York City, and it will carry over to future mayoral and New York City Council elections. CCRB that is being closed to dismantle. The reason why I want to dismantle it is because there are many complaints that go through the CCRB about police officers that are never really truly investigated, and they are just basically swept under the rug. And it is the responsibility, I believe, for the New York City Council to look into those things. The New York Police Department Firearm License Division being dismantled is because I believe that the New York City Council should look at these applications and should look at the background checks and the information that was gathered. For myself, I have a personal experience. I applied for a firearm license and they conducted a background check. And they returned that I had a criminal history background, that I was convicted, and all other kind of things, which proved to not be true. I was able to provide information and show that none of those things were true. However, because they did not have to report to anyone, they were able to allow these false findings to carry over. I would caution City Council to look at the background check findings personally to see if these things are true. They never had to produce a background check with me, their findings. They never had to show any information. They was just able to say word of mouth what they thought, that what they found, or what they accused me of finding. None of these things were true, and that led to me logic behind dismantling the firearm license division to ensure that everyone is getting a fair and accurate background check. And also, it was stated that, moral character, red flags, and everything else plays a role in the firearm license division. The red flags can come from anyone in the community. And same thing with moral character assessments. They can come from anyone in the community. And if moral character assessments can come from anyone in the community, then biological female police officers who have any males in her background that surfaced during her background check between the ages of 18 and 65 who did not register for the selective services, that has an impact on her moral character background. To the Supreme Court of the United States, it was the Tabitha Ward versus the New York Police Department Headquarters License Division. It was added to the Supreme Court docket. And if heard, this case would have changed the Bruin ruling from shall issue to constitutional carry. The It was distributed for conference on January the 10th, 2025. However, the petition was denied January the 13th, 2025. I am extremely honored for the opportunity and for the review that the SCOTA that conducted on my case. I am extremely honored behind it. They looked at the amicus curiae that was submitted in December 2022 and the writ of certiorari that was submitted in October 2024. They reviewed all of the appendices and the exhibits and everything there, and I am extremely honored and just honored at the way that they looked at everything. And, when I look at what is going on today, if you know, you know. If you had access to this information, if you know, you know. And I am just thankful for everything that they have done and at everything that they are doing.